James was in his early 30s, tall, handsome, with strong classic features and thick black hair. After 3 years in the business, his private detective agency had a good reputation in the city. He was single and in love. The only drawback here was that he was in love with a married woman. One usual day in office, James was sitting in his cabin, sipping on coffee and reading the newspaper. Somebody knocked at the door. "Come in," he said, keeping his cup of coffee on the table. A slender, middle-aged man with thin hair and rimless glasses, dressed in an expensive suit, opened the door and walked in. James got up from behind his desk and shook the newcomer's hand. "Please, sit down. I'm James, director of the agency. What can I do for you?" he said with a half-anxious expression, which he had practiced in the mirror many times. "My name is Henry Roberts," he spoke in a low voice. "You have been highly recommended to me. I have a very sensitive matter to discuss, and I've heard your agency is very discreet." James acknowledged the words with a modest wave of his hand and asked him what did he need help with. Henry explained, "I suspect my wife is cheating on me, but I want to be sure. I want you to investigate. Follow her when she leaves our apartment and let me know where she goes and who she sees." James said, "We can give you a complete and detailed report. When would you like it?" "I guess 2 weeks will be good enough, unless you think you should follow her longer," said Henry. James agreed, saying 2 weeks may be okay. Henry handed over his card to James, which had his address. Along with that, he also gave an envelope with his wife's picture and a check for the advance payment. Henry already knew the rates of James's agency. "What is your wife's name?" asked James. "Sharon Roberts." James held his breath. Sharon Roberts was his lover's name. This man must be her husband, he thought to himself. He opened the envelope and looked at the picture and the check, hoping to gain time and recover his cool. Henry supposed his seriousness was a desire to start work on the job at once. "I see you're a man of few words. I'm sure you'll give me a thorough report next time I see you. Good day." James finally found his voice. "Good day, Mr. Henry," he said, getting up from his chair and walking his new client to the door. After Henry was gone, James sat down again at his desk. He was in a state of shock. He opened the lower right-hand drawer and took out a bottle of scotch and a glass. He poured himself a drink, and while sipping it, pondered how to handle this tricky situation. So his new client was Sharon's husband. Not much to look at, he thought. No wonder she wants to get a divorce and marry me. He knew he couldn't give this client a true report. Still, he had to make a report. He decided to give his operative, David, the job and to stay away from Sharon during the 2 weeks of the investigation. He would tell her about her husband's suspicions later, after he had delivered the report, and they would have a good laugh then. David was a young man who had recently started to work. 2 weeks later, David, eager and in love with his job, came into James's office. "I finished the Henry Roberts investigation. I'll have the report on your desk first thing tomorrow morning." "Great. Do me a favor now, will you? Call Mr. Henry and ask him to come to the office tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. "You got it. See you tomorrow," said David. But the next morning, when Henry walked into the office, David hadn't finished the report yet. "Good morning, Mr. Henry. Sit down. Would you like a cup of coffee?" said James, trying to gain some time until his operative brought in the report. "That would be nice, thanks." James poured scalding hot coffee into 2 cups, placing the sugar and cream within Henry's reach. When they had started drinking the coffee, David walked into the office and, after greeting Henry, gave a folder to his boss. Quickly, James took out the original copy and gave it to his client, keeping the duplicate copy face down in front of him. Henry read the report without a change of expression. When he finished, he looked at James directly and said, 3. "Beg your pardon?" James asked surprisingly. I was afraid of something like this. 3 of them in only 2 weeks. What are you talking about? Your report. It's really complete. It shows that she had 3 lovers in 2 weeks. James choked on his coffee, spilling some on the duplicate copy of the report in front of him. He exclaimed, "What? Oh, pardon me," and using the excuse of wiping the coffee from each page of the report, started reading it. When he had finished, he was stunned and felt weak. With an effort, he raised his eyes to the face of his client. Henry had a grin on his face. With a knowing look and subtly mocking tone, he said, "Don't you believe that there are some women you just can't trust?" Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for more videos. There was a small celebration we hosted for our friends and family. After all the guests at the party had left, I watched my little sister Anna as she opened her last birthday present.
Anna, who's it from? I don't know, there's no name card. It's just written to Anna in a dark red color.
Inside was the most beautiful porcelain doll I'd ever seen. Her perfect milky skin was as white as snow, and her rosy cheeks complemented her big blue eyes. Her hair was nice and pretty. Her clothes were woven from pure silk and shined.
Ah, she's beautiful.
"It's a shame you don't know who gave it to you," I said, observing the name tag.
What will you name her?
Mom asked.
Josephine.
Josephine turned out to be Anna's favorite birthday present. It seemed that Anna never played with any of her other presents or toys. Sometimes it seemed like Anna was obsessed with the doll. Whenever it was dinner time, Anna never wanted to eat. She'd stay locked in her room with Josephine. Anna refused to go to Mass on Sundays. I found Anna's rosary and cross outside her door on a lampstand, and that scared me a lot. One morning, I woke up at 3 a.m. I was thirsty, so I crept to the kitchen to get some water. I passed Anna's room, and I saw the light shining through under the door and the keyhole. I put my ear against her door and listened.
Josephine, your hair is so pretty.
I heard Anna say in a very high-pitched voice,
Mom says I should quit playing with you.
And Jim says you're controlling me.
Anna sounded extremely sick and even slightly demonic. I peeked through the keyhole and almost had a heart attack. Staring back at me were Anna's blue eyes. But wait, Anna had brown eyes. I stumbled backwards and pushed against the wall violently.
Josephine, what are you looking at?
Anna said in a voice that sounded like a million spirits. Horrified, I ran to my room and locked the door. Over the next couple of days, Anna acted very strangely. She looked very pale and sick. Mom called in for a doctor. The doctor came over and checked Anna and asked us to get a few reports done for Anna. When the reports came, they turned out to be completely normal, and the doctor said she was fit and fine. But Anna's situation was deteriorating. She never made eye contact with anyone. All she did was stare at the wall. She never did anything else. It was so creepy. Josephine had disappeared. Mom and I couldn't find her anywhere. One day, a friend of Mom came to visit us. My mom told her about Anna's condition, and by the looks of all of it, she suggested my mom to show Anna to a priest. She could sense something evilly suspicious in Anna. A day or two later, a priest came over to deliver the demon from Anna. He laid a cross on her chest, and Anna immediately screamed out. Her scream was like a demonic screech, 1,000 nails against a chalkboard. She was sweating, and her straps looked like they were going to break. Only the whites of her eyes showed, and you could see the veins popping out of her forehead. The priest started saying multiple blessings. By the power of the Lord, I deliver this demon from this child. I gripped my mom for support. Anna screamed louder. All of a sudden, the lights began to flicker rapidly, and it seemed like dark shadows were bouncing against the walls. 1,000 voices started humming around in the room, and I swear I felt as if Josephine was sitting in the corner of the room, but when I looked, there was nothing. Suddenly, everything stopped. The electricity went out, and the voices stopped. Anna was breathing loudly, and the priest was saying a short prayer of thanks. Then he turned to us. Let Anna rest for a couple of days. Then she'll be fine. Keep her in her room, but do not talk to her. Then the priest set a book of prayers at Anna's bedside. He smiled at me, as if asking me not to worry, and then left. Anna lay there with her eyes closed. Mom pulled me out of the room. That night, I crept to Anna's room. It was locked. A dim light shone from under the door. I crept closer. That's when I heard it. Chants upon chants were coming from her room. Anna sounded like an evil spirit wafting against walls. What was she chanting? It sounded like a different language. Oh no! Anna was chanting our family prayer backwards. Completely astounded, I looked through the keyhole and saw Anna dancing around candles and a burning fire in the center. She was burning the prayer book, which the priest had kept on her bedside. A twisted, wicked face shone upon my little sister. All along the walls were horrifying writings and symbols, such as 666, and it looked like they were all written in blood. In my own fear, I passed out. Mom woke me up around 7 in the morning and asked me worriedly,
Jim, what happened to you? Why are you lying outside Anna's room?
Flashes of all that had happened the previous night came flooding to my mind, and I stood there in front of Mom, speechless. Mom shook me hard and asked,
What's wrong?
I fumbled as I said, Anna. Mom rushed to Anna's room and opened the door. There was nobody inside. I told my mom all that I saw. She immediately called up the police, and they reached in a few minutes. The search was on. Mom also called the priest to come and check. The burning of the prayer book and the weird numbers written on the wall, but he couldn't figure out what had happened. After that night, Anna was never to be seen again. But somehow, I knew that Josephine had something to do with it. Years later, I had a family of my own. My daughter, Sydney, opened her last present on her 8th birthday. Who's it from, I asked.
It doesn't say.
Inside was the most beautiful porcelain doll I had once seen. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for more videos.
My eyes couldn't focus for quite a few seconds after I opened them. My vision cleared, and simultaneously an acute shot of pain in my jaws made me squint hard. As I slowly came to my senses, I could feel the pain surge through my body. It felt like finding things about yourself that you never knew existed. It took me a minute to realize that I was lying by the road in the night. What time was it even? The cold was unforgiving. I had my jacket on, but my legs were frozen. Should not have worn a skirt, they were a little short for me. I was covered in dust, which made me wonder how long I'd been lying there. Wait, where was I? How did I get here? Wait, who was I? I couldn't remember my own name. I checked my head for any injury, but I looked fine. Then how did this happen? Drugs? Benzodiazepines? How did I know that word? I checked my arms for punctures. Nothing. Oral dosage? Probably. Was I an addict or was this done to me? I stood up and looked at my body. I was young, but not too young. I checked my pockets, almost sure I wouldn't find anything. I was wrong. I had a tiny purse in it. There was very little money, some coins and a parking ticket. October 16, 1994, New York. So was I a 20-something woman from New York who knew about benzodiazepines but not her own name? Great. I turned the ticket over and found a number scribbled on it. Bingo. I walked out of the bushes onto the road. The highway seemed dead. Not a single vehicle in New York? How was that possible? I started walking and I saw lights in the distance. Looked like a convenience store. It probably was. I quickened my pace, pulling my jacket into a tighter hug as the pain threatened to break me into pieces. I reached the store and considered if I should enter it. I decided I needed to drink something at least. I walked in and saw an old woman behind the counter. I greeted her. She looked up and stared at me as horror crept into her face. "Can I use the restroom?" I asked. She just gasped at me. This was getting suspicious. "I'll buy water and some food," I smiled. "Not for free." She just pointed her wrinkly finger towards the back of the store, visibly shaking. I rushed into the room, locked myself in, and threw a glance towards the mirror. My heart skipped a beat. It wasn't my face. Whose face was this? I thought to myself. But I had a stitch mark as if there was a cut on my face. I had no idea whose face was I looking at. I checked the rest of my body and I looked fine. God, what am I? I got splashed some water in my face and walked out trying to look at the old woman. I walked into an aisle and picked up some water, some painkillers, and a scarf. I paid her and I asked her without making eye contact, "How far is New York City?" 8 kilometers. "Why is the highway so deserted?" "The government declared an emergency." "What for?" "They are busting drug rackets. They've arrested a bunch of dealers. Gang wars and killings are all over the city." "All right." I started walking towards the door when I heard her croak, "What happened to you?" Without turning, I said, "Insect bite," and walked away. I exited the store and saw a phone booth right outside. I pulled out the ticket with the number and I entered the booth. I dialed the number slowly. I also memorized it just in case. The ringing began. I awaited, excited. I was finally going to find some answers now. "Hello," said a voice in British accent. I said nothing. "Who is this?" I had no idea what to say. "Who the hell is this?" Then I said the only word that I knew that night. Benzodiazepine. There were many types of benzodiazepines or benzos. It was a long shot. But how did I know all this? All I heard was silence from the other side. A truck passed by. "Where are you?" "I have no idea." "I'm sorry all of this went wrong. What do I do now?" There was more silence. He didn't know how to help me. "Listen, get back to base and we'll figure this out. I've got to go now. They're hunting us down." "Wait!" All I heard was a click. I walked out, frustrated. Who's hunting us down and why? It suddenly struck me the old lady's words. They are busting rackets, arresting dealers. I didn't like where this was going. I ran back into the store. I heard police sirens. I looked back and saw 3 police cars speed past me. I remembered the truck that passed by while I was in the booth. An emergency had been declared. What was that truck doing outside? I entered the store and saw the old lady was staring at the television screen. A story on the drug racket was being broadcast. A plastic surgeon had been arrested for apparently helping criminals change their appearances and identities. "Turn it off," I said. I now remembered. I remembered who I was, what I was. Changed appearance, drug-induced amnesia. I was trying to close a chapter of my life that would destroy me, but it clung to me like a sickness. She looked at me scared but didn't turn off the television. The next story was being broadcast now. The police had found the corpse of a teenage girl on the outskirts of New York City. Her clothes were missing. She was last seen wearing a brown jacket and a black skirt. Her scared little eyes moved down my body, looked at my brown jacket and my black skirt that were too short for me. I wasn't particularly fond of this part, but sometimes some things have to be done. Never leave a trace. First rule I learned in the drug business. I picked up a butcher's knife from the stand and looked her in the eye. "I'm sorry," I bowed. She opened her mouth to scream, but it never left her throat. I looked back at her, lying in a pool of blood, and quickly turned away. I had to get back to base. I had business to take care of.
Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for more videos.